from the Mercy One studio.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. It's time to hear from the top Christian litigators in the nation who have come forward to tell us the truth and help us defend our faith.
Hear ye, hear ye. All rise. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano, is in session.
And good Thursday morning from the Mercy One studios in West Des Moines. I'm Deacon Mike Mano. I'm here with my co-host, Gina No. Good morning, Gina. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Wow, busy week for Faith on Trial. There's a lot to follow this week with the Supreme Court ruling.
A lot to follow. We have to make a schedule correction here. We had somebody scheduled from First Liberty to speak to us about the Espinoza ruling from the Supreme Court the other day, and unfortunately they had a conflict, and we put them off till next week.
Right,
so
good to talk about
those are the little Blaine cases, okay?
Yes.
The little Blaine Amendment cases where states have passed their own version of a failed national constitutional amendment that would prohibit any funds, public funds, from going to parochial schools. And so that...
From the 1800s this began.
Yeah, it was something like 1875 was when that started. And it was started by a fellow by the name of James G. Blaine, who actually ran for president. As a matter of fact, I think he ran a couple of times and didn't get the nomination. And when he did get the nomination, he lost, I believe, to Grover Cleveland is who he lost to. But so
he didn't like Catholics, did he?
No, he didn't.
Schools and their hospitals or any of it.
No, he didn't like Catholics, and I think the attempt at the Blaine Amendment did not help him because he lost the state of New York by about 500 votes, and with that went the election. And there was a lot of commotion in Catholic churches this Sunday before the election about not only Blaine Amendment, but things that were said, the Romanism and rebellion remark that was made by a Protestant minister who was supporting Blaine, and that didn't help. So he just barely lost the state of New York, but anyway, with it went the presidency.
So each of the states has decided to come up with their own way of separating state funds from parochial schools. Yeah.
Well, there was about 30, I guess, states that had adopted these little Blaine amendments by the turn of the century, by 1900. And Montana's was one of them, although they had redone it later. But that was the issue in the case, the Espinoza case, that was decided by the Supreme Court against the Blaine Amendment.
And it came down this week, or
was it down? It came down the other day. I guess it came down last week.
Right.
And anyway, it'll be interesting to see how broadly or narrowly that opinion is interpreted going forward.
So we can look forward to that next week.
We can look forward to that next week. Talk about the little Blaine amendments and
the Supreme Court ruling.
And the Supreme Court ruling there, yeah.
Well, good. And then what else do we have today?
Well, today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk to our old friend Brad Dacus from the Pacific Justice Institute. In the earlier iteration of the show, Brad was on enough times he's almost like a co-host. You know?
Yeah, he's so smart and involved in everything.
He's involved in everything. We're going to talk about a case there in Salinas, California, where the federal court has agreed with the city that a church can't use its storefront facilities for church services, that has to be reserved, I guess, for fun things, vibrant things, not church services. And I should note here, too, and I just caught this morning, you remember last week we had on the Navy chaplain?
Yes.
The Navy
in
has
honor of the 4th of July.
Right. The Navy has now rescinded the rule that he was complaining about, which barred sailors and people on naval bases from attending indoor church services.
Off the base.
Off the base, right. And I think
very good.
He gave us a very good explanation of that last week. A good guy.
Well, thanks for that follow-up.
And I just saw that this morning. It just came over as an email from one of these pro bono legal services that follow these things. And they did that.
I'm glad you followed it.
Yeah.
And reported it to us.
They
you
follow
heard it
me.
here first.
They follow me. I keep getting stuff from them. All right.
Good.
Do you have a prayer to open us up with?
I do. Prayer for peace today. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world. Peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of the earth. Turn to your way of love those whose hearts and minds are consumed with hatred, strengthen us in hope, and give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where the true peace and love reign among nations and in the hearts of all. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Gina. And we will be back in about 3 minutes with Brad Dacus. This is Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the Morning is provided by Blessman International. According to a 2019 Global Food Security Report, more than 820 million people in the world are hungry today. None of us can help all of them. Most of us can help one child. Your gift of $1 a day through Blessman International provides a child in South Africa with a daily hot meal, place of safety, educational experience, and spiritual development. To get started, go to blessmaninternational.org and click Sponsor a Child.
Is it time for a new roof? Then it could be time for you to get to know Bell Construction. Bell Construction is a roofing company entering its 30th year of business. They specialize in residential re-roofs, like commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494.
Thank you, Big Red Q Quick Print, for underwriting the sports report. Family owned and operated since 1980, Big Red Q Quick Print is a full-service print shop ready to help you with all your printing needs with speed and accuracy. Forms, manuals, brochures, letterhead, envelopes, business cards, custom invitations, design, and bindery. Big Red Q Quick Print, located across from Merle Hay Mall. Online at bigredq-desmoines.com. Big Red Q Quick Print. We make printing easy.
What is the best gift ever? Giving a Catholic education is at the top of my list. Your contribution to CTO helps families send their children to our Catholic schools who otherwise could not afford it. In giving to CTO, you receive the best tax credits ever. Pledge or donate online at ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Dowling Catholic Sports on Iowa Catholic Radio is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic. With 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling graduate, and Dr. Greg Harper, the Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at Ashworth and 60th Street in West Des Moines, 515-440-4610, ashworthvision.com. 515-440-4610, ashworthvision.com. Ashworth Vision Clinic.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Faith on Trial provided by Paul Martin and Paul Mitchell, owners of Imogene Ingredients. Imogene Ingredients supply specialized feed ingredients for livestock and pet diets to improve maternal and young animal health in both conventional and organic production. And we're back. This is Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and we have with us right now Brad Dacus, who is the president of the Pacific Justice Institute. And Brad, it's been a while since we've had you on. We were off the air for a while.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm glad you're back on the air. I really appreciate you guys. You do great work.
Thank you. You know, we were just talking during the break here, Gina and myself, that you were on our air so many times with us that it was almost like you were kind of a permanent co-host.
Thank you. That's a big compliment. I appreciate it.
And I heard you visiting with Jimmy about whether you had the right signal or you were coming through okay. I remember one time we had you on the program. You were in an airport waiting for your flight.
Oh, yes. Yes, and you probably heard the background.
Yeah, we heard all the announcements and everything.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember you guys were very gracious. Thank you.
Well, and you're very gracious with your time, too. But let's talk about one of the things that we wanted to talk to you about today was this case out of Salinas, California, about, I guess, Jesus isn't hip enough to be on Main Street.
Yeah, it's really outrageous. This church called New Harvest Christian Fellowship is a church that wants to reach out to the community, and it's been leasing a building in the old downtown area. And it found out that right across the street was a building for sale that was larger, so they could have a fuller church service and room for people to attend, more people to attend, and they needed that. Sunday school, they needed room for that. So it was perfect. So they bought the building, and then found out that the city said, oh, well, no, you have to stay on the second floor. First floor has to be just retail. And they said, well, what's going on? And they said, well, well, we have this zoned as a fun district, and churches aren't fun. Now they allow a movie theater, entertainment take place all, but they said no, churches they're not fun. So we're not going to allow. There's also a post office and a nursing home also on the street, but they're saying churches,
which are a lot of fun, I'm sure. You're going to the post office, yes, or a nursing home. Yes,
and so they not going to attract tourists. People don't want to ever go to church. So, which is interesting because when I travel, actually I'll go to church, and there's a church right there having a service, there's a mass. I'll go to that, but yet they don't do that. They submit that tourists don't do that, and even if tourists didn't want to go to church, it still wouldn't violate the rights of the church to be treated fairly and equally under the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. So we were contacted. We at Pacific Justice Institute, our chief counsel took on this case, actually, Kevin Snyder, and we filed a lawsuit in federal court. Frankly, we thought this was going to turn out the way these kind of Arlupa cases do for us, that we always win these cases. It's just, a given. Well, we didn't. The judge, she ruled in favor of the city, and she said that no, the city has a right to have fun places, and she agreed that churches aren't fun. So because churches aren't fun, they don't fall into the fun district with retail and entertainment and other things. So the church can't be allowed to. There's no right to be able to use that half their building, the first floor of their building that they bought and paid for. So we at Pacific Justice now are appealing this case. But I will tell you, this is probably the most shocking Arlupa case we've ever handled in over 20 years. In that the reason, we've heard a lot of reasons, a lot of answers by local governments before, or one alleged that churches bring economic blight to communities and whatever. But this one, that churches simply aren't fun and aren't fun enough. That takes the prize right there.
And that's an interesting word that you use, Brad, especially under our recent incidences in Seattle with the word fun. It has really kind of taken on more of a negative connotation. And I understand there's protests right in front of the church and down that street as we speak.
Oh, yes, that's so ironic, because they say, they want to attract fun. They want to attract. Well, you know what they have? They've had protests down there. Scary protests, especially for merchants and businesses. And you know what's interesting is that we saw some of the most hideous protests and violence and rioting I've ever seen in my life. And yet it was done, ironically, probably just coincidence, maybe not, no. It was done after 2 months of shutting down the conscience of the nation, shutting down the churches of America.
Right.
And I don't think it was. I think there's a price we pay.
There's a cause and effect. I think you're right.
Yes. And I think that America right now should step back and say, wow, boy, do we need the conscience of America. People once asked me, they said, well, what kind of restrictions should we place on churches for politics or this or that? And I said, in speech and what they can say, and I said, well, what you're really asking is what kind of restrictions should we place on the conscience of a nation? Because that's what churches historically have proven themselves to be. And when we allow these kind of restrictions, we allow the conscience to be silenced, whether it's complete shutdown, or in this case, preventing a church from being in the downtown area, where they could have ministered. They could have provided civility. They could have.
But they do minister. From what I've read, this particular church, from their facilities, have allowed people to use it as shelter, a warming place. They've provided meals for the community, for both members and non-members. They have a service to their city of Salinas. I mean, they're being denied the ability to continue to give that service.
Right, exactly. So, if this didn't have to happen, and they could be there and have use the lower level and the full deal and provide all their services, right? Like they have in the past, to be able to do that continually through this larger facility, we could have maybe seen a different outcome in terms of the protests and more assurance by the local businesses. It would probably be more of a calm, I believe, because of that. And that's just a micro of what I think the cause and effect of what we're dealing with nationwide when we shut down churches and treat them so differently than other forms of speech that involves something oftentimes very different than the speech in our pulpits across America.
Yeah, our voices have been muted by all of this, and I think it's in some people's best interest to keep us muted, and that's what they're trying to do. I do want to ask you about this judge, though. It's my understanding it was a magistrate judge that issued the ruling.
Yes, it definitely was, and she was. It was a disappointment because even though it was in San Francisco, we were somewhat hopeful that that we're still going to get a fair shake and that that she was going to rule properly on it. The judge, her name is a U.S. magistrate judge, Susan von Keulen, Keulen, of the U.S. District Court of the Northern District of California, and she issued the surprising decision siding with the city of Salinas, and it was a surprise. This was one. Sometimes we're not sure. Sometimes we think we're going to lose and we win. This is one where we at Pacific Justice Institute we're fairly confident we were going to prevail because the city's argument was so weak, and the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act of 2000 is clearly established, partially by our past cases, to hold that you cannot prevent a church from being somewhere unless you have a compelling state interest, health or safety. This was wanting to have more fun.
Fun. It's a compelling state interest.
That's not a compelling state interest. Yeah. We have all kinds of buildings and facilities that are important that don't meet the fun criteria. It is very arbitrary and capricious. So the fact that it turned out this way, it just seemed like they just ignored case law. We've had a case we brought before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals where they said churches in San Leandro were creating economic blight to the communities, and there'll probably be increase in crime because of the economic blight. and we lost at the lower court in San Francisco federal court, like the same court actually, and we appealed to the Ninth Circuit and we won. It was a hands down, unqualified, complete reversal, solid case law. We just thought that any court in the Ninth Circuit would know better. So we're having to appeal this out of the Ninth Circuit.
So you had even a basis with this particular case where you run through the same scenario and won in the higher courts, and yet the lower court didn't want to even look at that particular case or the circumstances.
Well, they differentiated. They deemed a fun district.
Oh, fun versus blight.
Yeah, blight and crime and the things that were alleged in the other case. I think the other case's arguments were much more compelling than their desire to have a fun district and have more fun in the downtown. It's just really arbitrary to me as a man of faith. I love seeing places of worship in places where I'm traveling in downtown.
I wonder what other businesses they consider not to be fun. I mean, would a barber shop not be fun? I mean, going in and getting your hair cut, is that not fun? How about a dentist office? That certainly isn't fun.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that just, once again, it shows how arbitrary and capricious it is, this whole argument. And, and Salinas, by the way, just, has a record in its past of being oppressive of churches and ministries. Years ago, we had another case there. I was going to be a case. It was a church, and they were excluded completely from Salinas and from being anywhere in the city. They just said, no, we're not going to let you be here. We were all ready to take on the case, solid case. And the church said, you know what, we're obviously not wanted. We're going to go somewhere else. And they did. They just went somewhere else.
Kick the dust off their feet as they left the city?
Yeah, exactly.
How biblical, Mike. Yes.
Yeah, that's what they did. And but we, this church said, they were there, they were doing their work, and they're like, no, we're not surrendering this hill. We're staying here. We're going to continue reaching out. But it's an interesting town with an interesting history. Someone even wrote a book. It's a fiction, but it's a direct parallel to what is actually the history of Salinas and what they've done in the past and stuff. So it's an interesting town with a history that I wish wasn't there, but we're dealing with it right now, and we're hoping that in the end of the day that justice will prevail. The Religious Land Use Institutionalized Persons Act will be respected, and of course, with that, the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States.
So I just have something that's curious to me. They've been on this street for 25 years, just across the street, right? So were they fun when they were across the street, or how did the city have no means to be able to limit their activities?
It was the latter. They were there already. They were functioning. And it's very difficult for the city to say, church that's already there and established, we don't want you here anymore. We're going to change the zoning to prevent you from being there. They knew they couldn't get away with that.
Okay.
Once a church is there, it's very difficult to force them to leave. In fact, the church may get a conditional use permit, and the city may say, well, we're going to grant this for 5 years, and then we'll re-examine. And what we've told churches before is, once you're there, it's going to be very difficult for them to force you out. So go ahead, take the conditional use permit, and it's very, very difficult to force a church out unless you can find some change in circumstances. Arsenic in the dirt, because they it's just got to be something really extreme to be able to do that. So that's why the church was there. But the problem is it was a great problem. They outgrew themselves because they were serving a community, and they had more and more people coming and more people being blessed. And so, that's why they needed a larger facility.
Register all those people to vote.
That's right.
Well, and it's a really good point, because this is a reminder. This whole thing should be a reminder, especially those in blue states, where they've been very unreasonable to churches and treating them differently. This is a reminder of the importance of voting. It will impact literally their ability to worship and to practice their faith in the United States of America. So everyone should register. They should definitely vote, and they should not forget their faith when they go to the ballot box.
I'm glad to hear you say that.
Before we take our break, I just wanted to ask you another question. You're taking this up to the Ninth Circuit, and you've won up there before, but there's been an enormous change, it sounds to me anyway, like with the new Trump appointees to the Ninth Circuit. Are they getting a little more friendly to religion up there?
Yeah, depending on which judges are appointed, but it's almost 50-50. President Trump has changed about a third of the judges' spots on the Ninth Circuit have been filled by President Trump. It's been huge. So we're hopeful that we may get a 2-to-1 with 2 Democrat appointments, 1 Republican, or it could be the other way around. But religious freedom cases, they usually work they're really hard to make sure that there's at least a 2-to-1 Democrat to Republican. So this may have to go to the United States Supreme Court. But we're even with the Democrats dominating the 3-judge panel. If that happens, we don't know yet. We're optimistic.
Do you know who the panel is?
Not yet.
Okay.
I don't believe we have that yet. So we'll have to see. But it's an important case, and we encourage people to stay up to date. They can stay up to date by going to our website, pji.org, and sign up to get our Legal Insider newsletter. We'd love to keep people updated so they can keep us in prayer.
Right, and it's a good place to make donations to your institution, too, so that you can keep this fight going. Speaking of the Supreme Court, we're going to talk in a few minutes about some Supreme Court cases that just came down. Brad, you're going to stay with us over the break, so we'll be back in about 3 minutes. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the Morning is provided by Blessman International. The coronavirus has impacted lives in Iowa and around the world. This is especially true in rural South Africa, where COVID-19 restrictions have led to vulnerable children being hospitalized due to starvation. To combat this hunger, Blessman International now offers a program called One Child at a Time. You can sponsor a child in South Africa for $1 a day. Learn more at blessmaninternational.org. blessmaninternational.org.
Is it time for a new roof? Then it could be time for you to get to know Bell Construction. Bell Construction is a roofing company entering its 30th year of business. They specialize in residential re-roofs, light commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494.
What is the best gift ever? Well, some might say a Catholic education, and I agree. But if you think you can't afford Catholic education, think again. Apply for CTO, and you could receive up to half your tuition for kindergarten through 12th grade. More information is online, ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Dowling Catholic Sports on Iowa Catholic Radio is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic. With 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling graduate, and Dr. Greg Harper, the Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at Ashworth and 60th Street in West Des Moines, 515-440-4610, ashworthvision.com. 515-440-4610, ashworthvision.com. Ashworth Vision Clinic.
Thank you, Dental Associates, for underwriting Dowling Catholic Sports 365. With over 40 years' experience, Dental Associates is a group dental practice with the mission of promoting optimum health and well-being to all patients, providing preventative, restorative, and cosmetic dentistry for the entire family. Message underwritten by Dr. Kenton Gleichman, Dr. Steve Karbaka, Dr. Christine Mulcahy, and Dr. Ben Nagel. Dental Associates, addressing your smile, needs, and dreams. Online at DesMoines-DentalAssociates.com.
Here's your forecast on Iowa Catholic Radio. Showers and thunderstorms possible through the afternoon. We have a cold front moving through our area. Partly sunny and our high in the upper 80s. For tonight, a lingering shower and down to about 68. And then a hot and humid day coming up for us tomorrow. The sunshine comes back, 90. The weather is brought to you by Divine Treasures, a Catholic book and gift store serving the Des Moines community for over 25 years. I'm meteorologist Steve Hamilton on Iowa Catholic Radio.
And we are back. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and we still have with us Brad Dacus, who's president of the Pacific Justice Institute out in California. I like to call the land of fruit and nuts out there. Brad?
Yes.
and we sometimes wonder whether that's the agricultural product or the political product out there.
Oh, I tell you, I think it's well suited for both.
Couple cases that came down from the United States Supreme Court yesterday, which a lot of people were following. One had to do with the Little Sisters of the Poor, and the other one had to do with the ministry exception for 2 Catholic schools in your area out in California, where teachers were let go and they sued under a discrimination claim. Just wanted to catch your reaction to both those cases.
Yeah, we're very pleased with both cases. Little Sisters case was interesting because they had a ministry. They didn't want to compromise the ministry. They wanted to not provide contraceptives that was being mandated by Obamacare and from the Obama administration, and they wanted to have an exception for religious practices, religious institutions. Well, when President Trump was elected, he went and issued an executive order granting such an exemption for religious institutions. not to have to compromise their faith and literally shut down, because of the Obamacare mandates to provide birth control and abortifacients to their employees or to their people. So the case was brought and went up and down, and the Supreme Court ruled that that President Trump had the power to be able to protect the unborn or protect pregnancies, and more particularly to protect the institutions that have religious convictions and wanted to be exempt. And so it was a good victory. It was narrower than I personally wanted. I wanted a broader victory. But with that narrower decision, we had a stronger number signing off, 7-2. And often the Supreme Court will opt for a narrower decision if it can get have a stronger plurality of votes, or a stronger number of votes. So 7-2 is great. Of course, we had what I call the two God-hater justices, Ginsburg and Sotomayor. And Sotomayor claims to be Catholic, but she seems to always rule against God every chance she can. So
does Nancy Pelosi claim to be Catholic.
Yeah, it's a little baffling. Anyway, but it was a 7-2 decision. Two of the left side of the bench, Breyer and Kagan, sided with that. They have in the other religious freedom cases in the past as well. So they're what I call liberal moderates, but on religious freedom, they've been very friendly towards equal and fair treatment of religious institutions. And so we're real pleased with this decision. I think it's a good one. The other case... Well,
I was just going to interject here. The narrowness seemed to come on the issue of whether the rule was implemented properly. Is that how you read it too?
Yes.
That whether or not the administration went through the proper steps to articulate the rule that gave the Little Sisters their exemption.
Right, and procedure is important.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen that.
Haven't we seen that in a case this year that just came down? Procedure.
Yes, we did. It was interesting because everyone in the news, talked about. They misinterpreted the case. It was just the President Trump's administration not going through satisfactory procedures, and at the end of the day, I remember the President said, "No, we didn't lose. We're just going to go through the procedures, and we're gonna do it expeditiously, so we can go ahead with X, Y, and Z." So that's sort of what. So this was about. That was the question: did the President's administration go through the proper procedure to grant an exemption to this Obamacare mandate and allow religious institutions not to be persecuted from the Obama administration's policies and Obamacare?
Now, these came from two attorney generals, I think, from Pennsylvania and from California.
Right.
That were attacking this. And in one of those cases, I think it may have been the one in Pennsylvania, but in one of them, the Little Sisters of the Poor were not mentioned as a defendant. In other words, it was the administrative agency that was the defendant. But the Little Sisters of the Poor tried to intervene and were, at least initially, not even allowed to intervene. Right, and that was interesting too, because intervening, we at the Justice Institute have intervened before on cases, and then people say, "Well, what does it matter?" Well, the case that we intervened on was defending "In God We Trust" on our currency, and had we not intervened, I do not believe that we would have had that big Ninth Circuit victory when we did. So intervention is a very important ability to do, and you have to show that the case specifically impacts you and your interests. Like Little Sisters were definitely impacted. So not get too much into procedure, but because I don't want to lose the audience, but I can just say that at the end of the day, you're right. There were two cases, East Coast, West Coast, and so both of them were impacted by this and by this decision. It was a broad decision that protects the exemption, not just applied to Little Sisters, but much broader to religious institutions across America.
So on this particular issue, and this has been going on we've been battling this in the courts for the Little Sisters and the like for, 7 to 10 years already?
Right.
But companies like Hobby Lobby with strong religious convictions, they were allowed the exemption, then the courts upheld it quite a while ago. Is that right? Or at least that's the way I remember it.
Yes. Yes, they did. It was interesting. It was a 5-4 decision. Once again, it was just by one vote. Otherwise, Hobby Lobby would not be in existence right now. They would have been, they would have shut their doors completely, rather than provide for health benefits that included, the killing of the unborn, in essence. So abortifacient. So they, and they did prevail in that case. That case was about whether or not companies can be a person pursuant to their First Amendment rights and to religious freedom. And it was an interesting case. It was because some people say there's no way a company can ever be treated with religious freedom. But the court said no. When you have a family-owned business, and it's a tight family-held business, not a million stockholders out there, it's been a tight-held, controlled, and run business. That's different. So we're going to respect their ability to have their faith in their business. People shouldn't have to choose between having their faith and then not being able to reflect their faith in how they run their business, and have to give up their business or shut it down. So that was a very important case. This is interesting because this is particularly applying specifically, I think, to nonprofits, ministries, to churches. It gets actually much deeper to the core of the of religious freedom, in that we're not just dealing with individuals or persons, if you will, their faith. We're dealing with institutions serving and wanting to minister without being shut down by mandate to provide for abortifacients.
Exactly. Their religious held convictions about these kinds of drugs and their effects. So to hear the dissent, I thought, and honestly I haven't read it, but I thought I heard some commentary on it that the dissent in this particular opinion made it sound like this was an undue burden on women. But we're simply talking about the cost of contraceptive medication. Is that correct? And from what I understand, that's not a large financial burden on women.
Yeah, and even if it is, first off, I would say it's not. You're right. It's not a substantial hardship on women, number one. But number two, if women are wanting to have services, wanting to have products, whatever, to do something that they want to do, but employer doesn't want to pay for it, well, the general rule how that actually works is that people then will leave that employer and go to another employer that provides that benefit that they want, whether it's health insurance, whether it's a vacation time, or whatever it may be, long-term disability coverage. That's a part of the competition in the free market, is what benefits you provide versus what is being requested and demanded by the employees. So even if it was a substantial burden, I would argue the individual, the ability of the free market, we still have a free market economy. So hopefully we'll be able to keep it after this election, a free market economy, not a socialist economy. But yeah, so people have that ability. So I would even argue, even if it was a substantial burden, which it clearly is not based on the facts, that employees still have the freedom to go and seek out an employer providing those benefits that they personally require. And that's how it's been, and that's how it's worked in the free market very effectively and efficiently without the government intervening. And
somebody going to work for the Little Sisters of the Poor, you would think they would understand their position as they were going in. But anyway, the school, Catholic schools, Guadalupe School, and I think the other one was St. James or St. John's School, two consolidated cases dealing with the ministerial exception.
Yes, we at Pacific Justice Institute actually had a case ourselves, way out in in the Pacific, and the islands in the Pacific, South Pacific. It was U.S. territory, and we took on a case like that. We prevailed. It was a voodoo a witch person who was actually working for this Catholic school out there, And we prevailed, and we said they have a right to let them go because they're not of the same faith. They're not going to practice the faith. They're not going to help teach the faith. So this is very similar. These two cases, they're about the right of the employer to release employees when they're a religious institution like a church, and part of the job of the employee is some religious practice or some religious element. In these cases, you had like a math teacher, but they opened in prayer, and there was another teacher that had a religious aspect. I think it was leading prayer also or something, but their subjects weren't necessarily religious. I think one of them also taught some Bible. But the court held, and the big question was, what is the ministry exemption? Does that mean you have to be an actual minister per se?
Right.
For you to hire and fire, for a church to be able to hire and fire someone without being sued for discrimination? And the court held that no, minister as a title is very arbitrary because some denominations don't even use that word. Some religious groups use different terminology. Alito pointed this out. And he went on to point out that the real issue, the real core is this employee engaging in any kind of religious practice, leading kids in prayer, teaching Scripture, or complying with a model of the faith and role of the faith, and so because that faith is such a fundamental part of that whole existence of that institution, they should have a right to determine who is reflecting that or not, or qualified to reflect that faith. So the court ruled 7-2. Once again, 7-2 with, of course, the two God haters being the two, Ginsburg and Sotomayor, ruling against it, and it was a great victory because it broadened the concept of the ministerial exemption. It clarified it really to be anyone working for a church or a private Christian school that is any way has a religious function or religious practice in what they do on the job. Then that disqualifies them from being able to file some discrimination case when they're terminated from employment. So that way, there can be the government doesn't have to get its hands involved in, were they religious enough? Did they have the proper title as a minister? It really takes the government out of that, which is good, and it protects the religious institutions to do what God's called them to do as they see called by God to.
So how broad is the ruling for our churches and our communities of faith? Does it include the church secretary and the janitor at the school or at the church? How does this broadly protect religious institutions?
Yeah, I love that question because it will actually impact, I think, what churches and schools do moving forward. In that, I say there's a janitor, and the janitor has no religious function at all. He doesn't minister to the kids, doesn't pray to the kids. There's nothing he does at all in any way, shape, or form that's religious. Doesn't wear a T-shirt or something that conveys a lifestyle message different than the teachings of the church. They would not be able. That person would not have protection. That person would not be impacted by this. So they can raise a discrimination claim based on age or gender or whatever, sexual orientation, if they wanted potentially. And the same with the secretary, if there is no religious function. That said, religious institutions, generally when they hire, they see every employee, either explicitly or implicitly, as a matter of example or demeanor or countenance, whatever, to be a part of that ministry, part of what they're doing. And what this is going to do, and we at Pacific Justice Institute will work with churches in this regard, to actually bring greater clarification to job and employment to include explicitly the religious dimension in terms of the moral code, how they live their life in an exemplary way, whether they pray, whether they open in prayer, whether they meet collectively in prayer before the day starts. These are all things that need to be brought in explicitly in writing as a part of the job description and job expectations.
So that's interesting. So that's both at work and outside of their place of employment. Yeah,
potentially, yes, that's true. But it has to be spelled out. They can't just say, well, of course,
it was implied. It doesn't work.
Yeah. That would be in a handbook. And I think they made references to the policy manuals and the handbooks for the faculty in these cases. So you would put that in the handbook for all employees. So you wouldn't want a secretary in the office, for example, to be swinging around a pole at night in a stripper's bar, right?
No, exactly. Absolutely not.
But that has to be in the handbook. It has to be part of moral code. We at Pacific Justice Institute recommend that you have the employees sign off on the moral code, understanding these are the expectations because of our faith and what we believe. And that is very important. I had a case matter involving a pastor who was about to let go of a secretary. And he called me, and I said, well, really? I said, has she sent you any emails recently or anything at all? I said, yeah, read to me the emails. And he read them to me. I said, okay, she's working with an attorney already. She's setting you up. I said, do not fire her because of the way the law is, and she doesn't have any religious aspect to her employment, et cetera, et cetera. So I would do this. Keep her on. Start a morning Bible study and prayer time with all the employees, including her. Make that as a part of the job. And one or two things will happen. Either one, she'll be convicted and she'll repent from what she's doing and give her life to the Lord. Or she's going to just feel so uncomfortable she's going to leave. And that's what they did. And unfortunately,
this is why I love you, Brad. You're a smart man. Smart man. I didn't learn that one in law. I'll tell you that. But it worked, but this decision is going to be great because it's going to give greater clarity of exactly what church needs to do. And we at Pacific Justice Institute have bylaws and things like that, policies for free that we make available to any church and any parish that would like to utilize them. That's what I was going to point out is the human resource directors are going to be a little busy the next few months.
Yeah, and how do we get that information again? You want to give us your webpage?
So they can get our Legal Insider update. We have 52 cases in litigation. We'd love to keep people updated for free. It's once a week on our Legal Insider. But our website is pji.org. P for Pacific, J for Justice, I for Institute, pji.org.
Brad, I want to thank you for joining us again today and kind of welcome back to our second iteration of the show. We know that you stayed over a little bit to help us out here, and we certainly appreciate that.
Always a pleasure. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you
so much. Brad. God bless you. Brad Dacus, president of the Pacific Justice Institute. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio. We'll be right back after these messages.
What is the best gift ever? Giving a Catholic education is at the top of my list. Your contribution to CTO helps families send their children to our Catholic schools who otherwise could not afford it. In giving to CTO, you receive the best tax credits ever. Pledge or donate online at ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Dowling Catholic Sports on Iowa Catholic Radio is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic. With 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling graduate, and Dr. Greg Harper, the Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at Ashworth and 60th Street in West Des Moines, 515-440-4610, ashworthvision.com. 515-440-4610, ashworthvision.com. Ashworth Vision Clinic.
Thank you, Dental Associates, for underwriting Dowling Catholic Sports 365. With over 40 years' experience, Dental Associates is a group dental practice with the mission of promoting optimum health and well-being to all patients, providing preventative, restorative, and cosmetic dentistry for the entire family. Message underwritten by Dr. Kenton Gleichman, Dr. Steve Karbaka, Dr. Christine Mulcahy, and Dr. Ben Nagel. Dental Associates, addressing your smile, needs, and dreams. Online at DesMoines-DentalAssociates.com.
Thank you, CTI Ready Mix, for your support of Dowling Catholic Boys baseball broadcast. CTI Ready Mix has been serving Central Iowa since 2004 and has become a leader in ready mix concrete production. With 50 mixer trucks and locations in Johnston, Grimes, Elkhart, West Des Moines, and Carlisle, they are capable of supplying even the largest projects in Central and North Iowa. CTI Ready Mix, 1001 Southeast 37th Street, Grimes, 515-276-9567. Online at cti-ia.net.
Thank you to to Mercy College of Health Sciences, downtown Des Moines, for Underwriting Hour show, The Uncommon Good, with me, Bo Bonner.
And I'm Bud Marr. A degree from Mercy College provides endless possibilities. Students have access to patients with complex medical conditions, state-of-the-art medical facilities, highly motivated healthcare professionals, and classroom professors that transform them into servant leaders.
You can start the programs in fall, spring, or summer. There are endless possibilities available online at mchs.edu/kwky.
Thank you, Skeffington's Formal Wear, for sponsoring Dowling Catholic High School football. In business since 1951, Skeffington's Formal Wear offers quality service, style, and selection, providing tuxedos, suits, and casual groom attire for weddings, proms, and any other special occasion. Skeffington's Formal Wear, with convenient locations in Des Moines, West Des Moines, Davenport, Coralville, and Ankeny. All locations are family-owned and operated by members in their respective communities, fitting you for life celebrations. Online at skeffingtons.com.
And welcome back. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio. Interesting discussion today with Brad.
Dacus knows a lot about everything, doesn't he? Especially when it comes to the attacks on faith and religious.
You know now why he's always was one of our favorite guests to have on. He can talk.
And he gets up earlier in the morning. Well, not as early as he used to, but definitely first thing in the morning.
Yeah, because he's 2 hours.
Yeah, he's in California, isn't he?
He's starting at 8 o'clock, and when we were on at 9, he would get up at 7:30 or 7 o'clock out there to
start chit-chatting with us.
Start talking to us about that. So I don't know if he ever sleeps or not, but they're certainly doing God's work out there, and we appreciate that. And we will have him back. Like I say, we've had him on here so many times; he's almost like a permanent co-host for us. Yeah,
very good. And these cases are so very interesting. And to me, it's amazing that 10 years ago they tried almost an identical case for the church that they're currently representing, and won in the circuit court level after their appeal. And I understand a significant amount of money was involved that the city had to pay out to the church, and yet these churches or these cities are willing to continue to risk this kind of stuff to attack the
it's the ideologues running them.
And it's not their money, so they just they run it through the system. It's unbelievable to me. Anyway,
I want to mention something we've been following out in Texas, and it's a case of a man, Michael Hickson, 46, who is a quadriplegic. He's a black man. And he was moved. I guess he got the virus, COVID-19.
Right. He was disabled and in a home in a I don't remember the vocabulary for that, but in a residential facility.
And the doctors decided that they were not going to treat him for the COVID-19. That, as the article says here, the quality of life did not merit care due to his pre-existing disabilities. This is something that we were worried about when this whole thing shutdown started, because remember, we had on Christopher Farrar, who was special counsel for the Thomas More Society. Blank there, who was filing the case that they just won, by the way, the other day in federal court in New York on de Blasio's and Cuomo's restriction for churches. But anyway, we had talked to him about this and about cutting down or cutting people off of aid because of pre-existing restrictions. And what he had indicated, and I think he's right, is that this violates federal law. And so this man was basically starved for 6 days, and then he died. And he left a family, and my guess is we're going to see some litigation about this against the hospital and against that doctor, because not to treat somebody because of these pre-existing conditions is to say that is to deny him the care that he was entitled to. And
I read the story. It reminded me of Terry Schiavo quite a bit, because a lot of the care decisions were being battled between two different family members, and it just breaks my heart that a patient should have to go through. I mean, he was starved, literally starved.
Yeah.
They didn't give him food or water for 6 days. All they gave him were painkillers, and it was inevitable that he would die under that kind of circumstance. They could see it coming.
Yeah, and I don't know there if they may have any criminal charges filed against the doctor in the hospitals. That seems to me at least to be the level of manslaughter some way. All right, well, that's about it we have for today, so let's end with our prayer to St. Michael. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls.
Amen.
Amen. For Gene and myself, thank you for listening. Join us next week for another edition of Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio. Until then, have a blessed and peaceful week.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. Faith on Trial, with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano. Faith on Trial, Thursdays at 10 a.m. on Iowa Catholic Radio, iowacatholicradio.com, and the Iowa Catholic Radio app.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.